At its peak, Subway had more locations than McDonald's. Today, 7,600 of those stores are gone, and counting. But the real question isn't how Subway lost thousands of stores. It's why the people running the brand watched it happen and chose repeatedly to do nothing. This isn't just a story about a sandwich chain. It's about what happens when a company confuses size with strength and mistakes being everywhere for being good. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how Subway built the biggest fast food empire in the world and then tore it apart with its own hands. It started with $1,000 and a 17-year-old who needed to pay for medical school. In 1965, Fred DeLuca convinced his family friend, a nuclear physicist named Peter Buck, to lend him that money. DeLuca's plan was simple. Open a sandwich shop in Bridgeport, Connecticut, make enough for tuition, move on with his life. He never moved on. By 1974, Subway had its first franchise location outside Connecticut. By the mid-1980s, it had hundreds. By 2015, exactly 50 years after that first $1,000, Subway operated 27,102 locations in the United States alone. More than McDonald's, more than Starbucks, more than any restaurant chain in American history. Fred DeLuca once said publicly that Subway could reach 100,000 locations worldwide. Not a typo. 100,000. At the time, it didn't sound insane. It sounded like a vision. But that vision had a foundation built on two pillars. Just two. And DeLuca poured everything. The marketing, the growth, the entire identity of the brand on top of them. He never built anything else underneath. And here's the thing about structures built on two pillars. When one starts to crack, the other has to hold everything. When both crack at the same time, nothing survives that. The first pillar, the $5 footlong. The $5 footlong wasn't a corporate idea. It was an accident. In 2003, a single Subway franchisee in Miami noticed something odd. During the week, his restaurant was packed. Weekends, empty, dead. So he tried something. $5. Any footlong. Weekends only. The line went out the door. Word spread to other franchisees. Then corporate caught wind of it. By 2008, right in the middle of the worst financial recession in decades,
the 158-year-old investment bank Lehman Brothers was on the brink of failure.
Subway turned the $5 footlong into a nationwide campaign. The jingle became impossible to escape. Sales exploded. For a few years, Subway could do no wrong. But here's what nobody was saying out loud. $5 for a footlong in 2008 barely covered the cost of making it. Franchisees, the small business owners who had borrowed money, signed leases, and hired staff to run these stores, were losing money on every single sandwich. Corporate kept pushing the promotion. Franchisees kept absorbing the losses, quietly, because what was the alternative? Push back and risk losing everything. Picture a family in Ohio. They'd invested $300,000, their savings, a bank loan, everything, to open one Subway. They believed the pitch. Low overhead, recognizable brand, simple product. Now corporate is running a national campaign that costs them money every time a customer walks in. They couldn't say no. The campaign was too popular. And when corporate finally ended the $5 footlong in 2012, something nobody expected happened. Sales dropped. Customer traffic fell. People had been coming to Subway for one reason, price. And when that reason disappeared, so did they. The first pillar had cracked, but there was still the second one. The second pillar, Jared. If you were alive in America between 2000 and 2015, you know who Jared Fogle is. In 1998, Jared was a 425-pound college student at Indiana University. He started eating at Subway, twice a day, every day, and in under a year, he lost 245 pounds. A local newspaper ran the story. Men's Health picked it up. Subway called him. On January 1, 2000, the first Jared commercial aired. Within weeks, Subway sales rose an estimated 20%. Jared filmed more than 300 commercials over 15 years. Subway's own chief marketing officer credited Jared with driving between 1/3 and 1/2 of the brand's entire growth during that period. He wasn't just an ad campaign, he was the brand. And Subway knew it, because in 2005, when they briefly pulled Jared from their advertising,
spokesman Jared Fogle, this raid believed to be linked to an employee at Fogle.
Sales dropped 10%, almost immediately. So here's the question you have to ask. When your entire brand identity lives inside one person, when pulling his face from an ad costs you 10% of your business, what do you do when warning signs about that person start appearing? Subway's answer was, ignore them. Reports about Jared Fogle's behavior surfaced as early as 2007. In 2008, a Subway franchisee named Cindy Mills sent messages to Subway management alleging that Fogle had spoken openly about abusing children. According to reports, management's response was that because Fogle wasn't a Subway employee, there was nothing they could do. They kept him in the ads. In 2004, according to a lawsuit later filed, a Subway senior vice president allegedly silenced a report that Fogle had propositioned an underage girl at a promotional event in Las Vegas. Subway's official response? No record of any complaint. They kept him in the ads. So here's what you need to understand. This wasn't a company caught off guard. On July 7, 2015, the FBI raided Jared Fogle's home.
Man made famous as a Subway spokesman has not returned home tonight after federal investigators spent.
He was charged with child sex tourism and possession of child pornography. He later pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 15 years and 8 months in federal prison. Subway cut ties with Jared the same day the raid made the news. 15 years. More than 300 commercials. A brand identity worth billions. One tweet. We no longer have a relationship with Jared and have no further comment. That was it. The Jared scandal didn't cause Subway's collapse on its own, but it hit a brand that was already hemorrhaging. Between 2015 and 2016, Subway's reputation score, tracked by the Reputation Institute, dropped 6 points, from 77 to 71, from nearly excellent to slightly above average. The research showed that once a company's score falls below 70, customers' willingness to spend drops sharply. Subway was standing one bad quarter away from that cliff. But beneath the scandal, the structure itself was failing. Subway's entire growth model had been built on volume, not value. Fred DeLuca's mandate was simple. Open more stores, everywhere, as fast as possible. If a franchisee didn't develop new locations in their territory, corporate would let someone else do it instead. So franchisees opened stores they didn't need. Stores that pulled customers away from their own existing locations, just to protect their territory. By 2012, average sales per Subway location had peaked. Then they started falling, every single year, without pause, and the competition was watching. Chipotle had taken Subway's fresh, customizable, healthy positioning and executed it with better ingredients, stronger branding, and a lunch crowd that actually wanted to be there. Jersey Mike's, Jimmy John's, Firehouse Subs, all growing. In 2016 alone, those 4 competitors grew their combined U.S. sales by $540 million. That same year, Subway's domestic sales dropped $200 million. So ask yourself, would you have seen this coming? The signs were everywhere. The $5 Footlong was training customers to value Subway at $5. Jared was hiding something the brand refused to look at. Franchisees were opening stores that competed with themselves. And the fresh, healthy market was moving on without them. One decision didn't do this. A decade of the same decision, grow faster, cut costs, let someone else handle the problems, did this. Fred DeLuca died of leukemia in September 2015, 2 months after Jared's arrest. He'd spent 50 years building the biggest restaurant chain in the world. He handed it to his sister before he passed. He never saw what happened next. Today, between 2016 and 2024, Subway lost a net of 7,600 U.S. locations. That's 28% of its entire domestic footprint. Gone in less than a decade. More than 1,000 stores closed in 2018, more than 1,000 in 2020, more than 1,000 in 2021. In 2024 alone, over 1,026 stores physically shut their doors, though the publicly reported net number, after counting new openings, was 631. The people behind those numbers weren't corporations, they were individuals. Real people who had invested between $200,000 and $500,000, often borrowed against their homes, into a Subway franchise. They believed the pitch, trusted the brand, counted on it as a retirement plan, or something to pass to their children. Many walked away with nothing. In Oregon, when 23 Subway locations closed suddenly in 2024, store managers found out the same way customers did. The doors were locked. One manager, Joanne Kennedy, told a local news station there was no warning, no heads up, no transparency. Completely and totally blindsided, every one of us. She said food orders had stopped arriving weeks before the closures, but corporate communications kept telling them it was business as usual. That detail, right there, that's the whole story of Subway in one moment. In 2024, private equity firm Roark Capital acquired Subway for a reported $9.6 billion. And this is the part of the story that doesn't get enough attention. When private equity buys a struggling brand, the goal isn't to fix the culture. The goal is to fix the numbers, fast. That means renegotiating supplier contracts, pushing franchisees to renovate at their own expense, cutting costs that customers can see, and squeezing every remaining location for maximum output before a potential resale. Subway is now in the middle of what it calls a Fresh Forward 2.0 redesign. Brighter lighting, new graphics, warmer finishes. More than 10,000 North American locations have already been remodeled or rebuilt in this new image. Franchisees are funding most of it themselves. Whether this remodel fixes the brand's actual problem, that customers don't believe in Subway the way they once did, is a different question, one that a coat of paint and better lighting can't answer. Starbucks now sits at roughly 17,000 U.S. locations and is closing the gap. At current rates, Starbucks is expected to overtake Subway as America's largest restaurant chain within the next 2 to 3 years. The company that once chased 100,000 stores worldwide is now fighting to hold 20,000 in its home country. Subway built an empire on two things: a price point and a face. When the price became unsustainable and the face became criminal, the empire had nothing left underneath it. That's the real lesson. Not that Subway grew too fast. Plenty of brands grow fast and survive. The lesson is that Subway grew without ever asking why people were actually showing up. And when the answers changed, Subway didn't. If stories like this, how brands rise, how they fall, and what the people inside never saw coming, are the kind you can't look away from, subscribe. A new story every week. And if you want to see what happened when another American giant made the exact same mistake, chasing size instead of substance, that video is right here.